Leader of Ukip, Nigel Farage, has been injured in a plane crash. The police say the accident happened at around 8 this morning, just west of Milton Keynes, near Brackley in Northamptonshire. Now, it's understood the plane had been trailing a banner and had only been in the air for some 10 minutes before it came down near the airfield. Mr. Farage has been taken to hospital at Banbury for a checkup. The pilot had to be cut from the wreckage, and he's been airlifted to hospital now in Coventry. Well, let's get the very latest. Lisa Dowd at the scene of the crash, Darren Little at the hospital where Mr. Farage is being treated. Lisa, first to you. I understand the air accident branch will be on its way, but clearly he is, and the pilot too, lucky to escape with their lives.
Well, we understand from a photographer, a member of Ukip who was here when the crash happened, that the aircraft had been in the air for around 10 minutes or so at around 8 o'clock this morning. It was flying at quite a low level over the airfield, around 10 to 15 metres from the ground. Now, police are telling us that they understand that the aircraft had been trying to land here, but at some point it flipped over and crashed to the ground, really crushing the cockpit and Nigel Farage and the pilot who were inside. It's really amazing to see that Nigel Farage managed to walk away from the cockpit with minor injuries. The pilot, though, was trapped inside for some time. He, though, managed to reach for his mobile phone and call the emergency services, giving them all the details they might need to know, even down to the finer details of the make and the model of the aircraft. So amazing really that either of them really survived this when you see the wreckage, and plenty here at the scene now for air accident investigators and police to do. They'll be looking at whether the banner which was trailing behind this aircraft played any part, whether it got tangled up in it, whether crosswinds might have played a part in the accident. We also know that this airfield was unfamiliar to the pilot, and we have been speaking to Detective Chief Inspector Martin Kitchen, and this is what he had to tell us.
I can confirm this morning at 8 o'clock the emergency services received a phone call as a result of a light aircraft coming down at this location. On arrival, emergency services have released the pilot from the plane, who was taken to Coventry Hospital at Wallsend by air ambulance. The passenger had been released prior to the arrival of emergency services and has been taken to hospital at Horton Hospital at Banbury. Investigations continue into the cause of the accident, and they will continue during the course of the rest of the day. We are in consultation with the Air Accident Investigation Board, who are providing us with advice at this time.
Well, what are the aftermath? Let's catch up with Darren at the hospital. Extraordinary, Darren, when we see these photos of Nigel Farage in that wreckage, that he managed to escape.
Oh, without doubt, and I'm told inside the hospital here, although he suffered relatively minor injuries, just minor facial injuries and some chest pains, which they are checking out to make sure everything's okay with his ribs and other things within his chest. He is traumatised and shocked by what has happened. Clearly, coming into such an impact at such a low level, that plane flipping, being trapped, and then having to crawl out and then see the pilot be cut out of that plane. He is quite in a degree of shock. We're not sure quite when he is going to leave the hospital here. Meanwhile, the pilot, as Lisa was saying, was conscious throughout. He was airlifted to the University Hospitals Coventry and Warwickshire. We understand with leg and back injuries, slightly more serious, although we understand his injuries are not life-threatening. But when you see the state of that plane, an engine somewhere else on the airfield away from the main plane itself, really both of them have had a very, very lucky escape.
And do we know, Darren, if Mr. Farage has managed to help the inquiry as yet as to what may have gone wrong?
I think it's too early to say at the moment. There's certainly no police here or any investigators. I think they're just trying to get him patched up and then see where they go from here. We also don't know even whether he has voted today. I mean, clearly that was the intention of what he was doing, and we're not sure whether he will even be discharged today. It all really depends on the condition when they do those body scans and find out how he is in his entirety. But at the moment it sounds his mind is a long way from polling day. He's thinking about other things at the moment.
Yeah. Darren at the hospital and Lisa at the scene of the accident. Both, thanks very much indeed. Of course, more.
He's battered and bruised. But Nigel Farage is one politician whose election night misfortunes were eclipsed by the human drama he faced in the skies above Northamptonshire. 2 days on, he's still in pain, but hasn't lost his sense of humour.
I'm not even keen on flying. Part of this was to try and prove to myself that flying wasn't something to be scared of.
The wreckage of this light aircraft is a vivid reminder of just how fortunate the former UKIP leader and his pilot was to survive the impact. They'd been towing a Vote UKIP sign on Thursday morning when it became tangled in the tail.
As soon as we hooked onto this thing, he said, "This is an emergency," because the banner, it hadn't hooked up on a cord, something had got caught over the tail, so we sort of went up and spent the next 5 minutes waiting to crash.
After the plane struck the ground, the drama still wasn't over as both men were trapped in the crushed cockpit.
The next bit was worse, really, because there was a strong smell of petrol. I could feel petrol in my hair, and I was trapped in this thing, and I was talking to Justin, the pilot. We were saying to each other, "Are you okay, are you okay?" But he was panicking then more than me because of the petrol, and I just this awful feeling that we survived the impact, but God, were we going to burn to death? And yeah, that's pretty scary.
And it was that brush with death which has put everything else into context. Nigel Farage lost his bid to become a Westminster MP on Thursday, but that disappointment has been tempered by the knowledge that at least he's still here to fight another day. Mark.
Morning, Mr Van Rompuy. You've been in office for 1 year, and in that time the whole edifice is beginning to crumble. There's chaos. The money's running out. I should thank you. You should perhaps be the pin-up boy of the Eurosceptic movement. But just look around this chamber this morning. Just look at these faces. Look at the fear. Look at the anger. Poor old Barroso here looks like he's seen a ghost. You know, they're beginning to understand that the game is up. And yet in their desperation to preserve their dream, they want to remove any remaining traces of democracy from the system. And it's pretty clear that none of you have learned anything. You know, when you yourself, Mr Van Rompuy, say that the euro has brought us stability, I suppose I could applaud you for having a sense of humour, but isn't this really just the bunker mentality? You know, your fanaticism is out in the open. You talked about the fact that it was a lie to believe that the nation state could exist in a 21st century globalised world. Well, that may be true in the case of Belgium, who haven't had a government for 6 months, but for the rest of us, right across every member state in this union, and perhaps this is why we see the fear in the faces, increasingly people are saying, we don't want that flag, we don't want the anthem, we don't want this political class, we want the whole thing consigned to the dustbin of history. And we had the Greek tragedy earlier on this year, and now we have the situation in Ireland. Now I know that the stupidity and greed of Irish politicians has a lot to do with this. They should never ever have joined the euro. They suffered with low interest rates, a false boom and a massive bust. But look at your response to them. What they're being told, as their government's collapsing, is that it would be inappropriate for them to have a general election. In fact, Commissioner Wren here said they had to agree their budget first before they'd be allowed to have a general election. Just who the hell do you think you people are? You are very, very dangerous people indeed. Your obsession with creating this Euro state means that you're happy to destroy democracy. You appear to be happy for millions and millions of people to be unemployed and to be poor. Untold millions must suffer so that your Euro dream can continue. Well, it won't work, because it's Portugal next. With their debt levels of 325% of GDP, they're the next ones on the list, and after that I suspect it'll be Spain. And the bailout for Spain would be 7 times the size of Ireland, and at that moment all of the bailout money has gone. There won't be any more. But it's even more serious than economics, because if you rob people of their identity, if you rob them of their democracy, then all they are left with is nationalism and violence. I can only hope and pray that the Euro project is destroyed by the markets before that really happens.